Thank you, thank you. All right. Good morning, good morning. Thanks. Appreciate it, buddy. All right. Boy, it's just so good to be back with you folks again. I really like you guys. And, oh, that's kind of you to say. You're just saying that. Oh, man. My back's getting better. I'm doing better. A little bit at a time. Slowly but surely. Man, I was disappointed that the Pacers lost. You were too, because we're in the Indy area. And give you a little secret, I'm an IU grad. My first master's was from Indiana University, and I love IU basketball and football. But I can't watch the games. It's too much pressure. Emotionally, I can't handle it. So what I do, and see if anybody in here identifies with this, because you know where I'm going. I keep an eye on the score, and if we win, I'll go back and watch the game. If we lose, I thought I'm not gonna spend 2 hours of my life if we're gonna lose, So why would I tell you that this morning? Because when you know the outcome that you've already won, you don't get nervous. You see, you're really nervous, as I am, about different issues in your life and in my life. I got news for you. I know how it turns out. We win. See, we win. And as we're going to be looking once again at David and Goliath, this story, and continue doing a deep dive, that's one of the outcomes I think that the biblical narrator wants us to see. Is that we're going to win on this thing. See, pull out your note outline as well as your flashlight. That's the very first time I've said that in my ministry. Pull out your flashlights. And what we're going to do, I'm going to read this text that's on your note outline this morning. Once again, real people in a real place for real reasons. And sometimes and I'm going to show you some insights as I read the part of this text here that you haven't considered before. Because it's so easy, you become so familiar with the story that you overlook details that are there for a reason. Here we go. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp, and he was over 9 feet tall. I'll talk about that in just a second. Now watch. Got your pen or pencil or your crayon or whatever? He had a bronze helmet, circle bronze. You've never seen this before, watch. On his head, and wore a coat of scale armor of what? Bronze. Second time it's used, circle it. Weighing 5,000 shekels. Notice the details. On his legs he wore, circle bronze greaves. Those are like catcher's shin guards. And 4 times the word bronze is used. You're going to see why in a minute. A bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and it's what? Iron. Are you aware of the fact that this is at the beginning of the Iron Age? Why would the biblical narrator mention bronze 4 times and then insert the word iron? It would get people's attention. Why? Israelites did not have iron technology. He's giving a hint to his readers. Now, Israelites had bronze. They did not have iron. And we'll talk about that next week. Because if you've got iron technology, you can make axles. Why? Chariots. Dude. Chariots. You can't have a bronze axle on a chariot. It's too soft. And so what we're seeing here, and we'll talk about this next week a little bit, the Philistines are going to have a technological advantage. They have iron technology. Israel does not. And you're seeing it in the text right here. Isn't that cool? It's kind of like, dude, I've never heard this before. Yeah, there it is. Let's keep going. Its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, or are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he's able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Remember, we talked about this last Sunday. It's this whole idea of solidarity. The principle of solidarity. One represents the whole, and you're seeing it right there in living color. Then the Philistines said, "This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man. Let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were what? Predicate adjectives. 2 predicate adjectives as an English teacher. Dismayed and terrified. See, you can be dismayed but have courage. Or you can be dismayed and it can end up being you're scared to death. So in this situation, they're not only dismayed, like, whoa, but they're terrified. And we'll kind of unpack that as we go along. And for 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and every evening and took his stand. That, by the way, that's trash talking 80 times. Count them. See? All right, here we go. Just to give you a little bit of review, the Philistines probably immigrated from Crete. Notice the verb emigrate starts with an E. Immigrant, a noun, starts with an I, but they immigrated, that's the verb form, from Crete, established a civilization in southwest Judah. We talked about this last Sunday morning, remember? You can see there was a tremendous earthquake in antiquity that destroyed the island of Crete. So the residents there, who were Minoans, they needed to flee, and they were seafaring people. Now, why didn't they sail north to Greece? Oh, you're not going to do that because Greece was a world power. Well, then why don't they go to Turkey? The sea currents don't head that way. However, they were aware that if they followed the trade routes and the prevailing winds, they could sail to the southeast to what's called the Near East. The Far East would be India, China, what's known as today as Russia or Mongolia. That's the Far East. The Near East, it's also called the Middle East. That's where they went. In an area called, have you ever heard this term before? The Levant. You need to be familiar with that term. The Levant. The Levant covers the entire Near East, the Middle East. And you can see it covers Israel. To the north there is Lebanon, Syria, and parts of Iraq and Iran. And then if you look to the east, see the big red dot? To the east of there, in other words, that lower right-hand corner, what country is that today? That's correct. Somebody said it. The Kingdom of Jordan. It's not a country, it's a kingdom. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. What's the capital of Jordan today? Amman, from which we, in antiquity, we got the word the Ammonites. See, Amman. And so you can see that's called the Levant. And so just understanding geography and archaeology, it's an important term. Leads us to number 2, to survive. Once they established a beachhead in the Levant, in the southwestern corner of Canaan, they needed more farmland. You got to feed your people. And they wanted to control the trade routes. And so what they're going to do, we talked about this last Sunday morning, they're going to be encroaching into the area of the Valley of Elah. Some of the best farmland in Israel is the Valley of Elah. Even to this day, it's very, very rich. It's in an area of right before the hill country. It's called the Shephelah. The Shephelah. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. So the conflict is happening in the Valley of Elah, and their intention is to try to make the approach up to Jerusalem. Remember, we talked about this a week ago. Establish trade routes, get farmland to be able to survive and feed our people. That's the reason. There's motivation behind what they're doing. Well, Saul and his armies realize, uh-oh, these dudes are coming up, they're threatening us, and so we've got to protect ourselves. And so Saul went down, and there's now a standoff at the Valley of Elah. That's the reason for the conflict. And we'll talk about that as we unveil a little bit more next week. Notice I've quoted Max Lucado. All of us face giants. All of us face Goliath, so to speak. Your Goliath doesn't carry sword or shield. He brandishes blades of unemployment, abandonment, sexual abuse, or depression. Your giant doesn't parade up and down the hills of Elah. He presses through your office, your bedroom, your classroom, and he brings bills you can't pay, grades you can't make, people you can't please, whiskey you can't resist, pornography you can't refuse, a career you can't escape, a past you can't shake, and a future you can't face. Man, I wish I wrote that. He's really a good writer. See, you are facing a giant in your life, maybe more than one. And I don't know what your giant is, and maybe it's health, maybe it's a marriage, maybe it's one of your kids. We've got a prodigal, I told you that, see. And to give you some features of this giant would be important. And this is feature number one. Giants are daunting. They are tools of the enemy. Notice the enemy was the Philistines, but the tool of the enemy, the tip of the spear, was Goliath. The devil will bring about a tool that will be daunting to you. I told you last week that, and I just read it there, the details are given concerning Goliath's armament. Remember? I talked about this. The Bible tells us he was over 9 feet tall. Another version gives it in cubits, and so we're estimating Goliath was about 9'6". How tall is a basketball rim? 10 feet. By the way, Shaquille O'Neal's what, 7'2"? Shaq? Yeah, he's got Shaq by over 2 feet. If that dude walked under a basketball hoop, he would hit his head, or at least his helmet. It's not in your notes, but jot this down. That average soldier, 5'8", isn't accurate. Do you know what the average height was of a male in 1000 BC in the Levant? See, you don't know that, do you? I didn't either. I did more research last night in the motel room down next to Colt Stadium where we stayed. 5'1". 5'1". They weren't tall. By the way, neither were the founding fathers of the United States. Thomas Jefferson was like 5 feet tall. You know, now I'm 6'3", dude. We get tall now. Back then, the average height of a male Jew in 1000 BC was 5'1". How do we know that? Skeletal remains. They dig up skeletons, they date them through carbon-14 dating, and they discover that dude was about 5'1". Average height was 5'1". So if you put David probably was shorter. He was not full grown. Goliath's nearly twice his height. I mean, he's going to make Shaquille O'Neal look like a Girl Scout. This guy's a stud. 9'6" without his helmet. But then the Bible goes on. It says his helmet was made out of bronze. Look at the details. He had a coat of mail that was made of bronze. Continue on. He had greaves made of bronze. The Bible says that he had a shield, but he also had a shield bearer along with him. That says he had a spear shaft the size of a weaver's rod. Notice the details that Samuel is going into as he describes it. Not only that, he tells us that the head of the spear was made of iron. He gives us the weight of that. Why the details? Why the specifics? I mentioned this to you last week. Why would all these details be given? Because when you face giants in your life, they become so real that you can describe them in detail. The number of times that my head has hit the pillow and I've gone again and again and again regarding our son who is no longer walking with the Lord. What did we do? What could we have done different? Maybe it's because we had him go to church and youth group growing up. Maybe it's because I was a pastor. Maybe, and you've done the same thing. You see, whatever giant you're facing in your marriage, in your health, in your finances, in your job, in a relationship that's headed south, you have examined it so much you can describe it in detail. That's why this information's given, see. Again, the biblical narrator is giving us a hint. Sometimes the giant that stands in front of you is so daunting, you know every piece of that thing. And you've examined it and re-examined it. Why did our daughter do this? You see, your hope and desire was that your kids would grow up and have straight teeth, straight A's, and a straight sexual orientation. And so now it doesn't work out the way you plan. And so you continue to examine and re-examine. She was raised in the church. Why is she shacking up with her boyfriend? We did the best we can, and now he's addicted to alcohol. So much so that you can describe it in detail. And it's daunting. As a matter of fact, it looks impossible. It is impossible. I mean, what are you going to do? David, you're going to take on this guy who's almost 10 feet tall? Like Saul said, I mean, he's been a champion since a child. What are you thinking? The Bible tells us that he came out every morning and every night for how many days? 40. 40. It's interesting because that number is a number that is ominous throughout the Bible. The flood, 40 days and 40 nights. The temptation of Jesus, 40 days and 40. It's an interesting thread. And so here we see this number again, this daunting number, this 40, 40, 40. And I think part of what Samuel is trying to tell us is, you deal with this every day. He taunts you every day. You wake up in the morning, there it is. Every morning. How do you escape that? See? And you're dealing with that right now with your kids and with your grandkids and with stuff that's not exactly working out the way you'd hoped. So not only is the giant daunting, he's also taunting. What was Goliath's goal? His goal wasn't simply to defeat a representative of Saul. His ultimate goal was the issue of control. It says that. If he, I'm in verse 9, is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects. You will serve us. You will become our slaves. See? And what's going to happen in the giant that you're facing is that the ultimate goal of the enemy is to enslave you. His goal is to control you. And there's times he does a pretty good job of it. One of the things I fight is discouragement. It doesn't take a whole lot to discourage me. I'm a middle child. I'm a pleaser, See, if I was your pastor, you don't want me as your pastor. I hate conflict. See, I'm a middle child. See. And some of you hate conflict. Oh, there's some people that love conflict. We got politicians like that. They love to cause chaos. They love conflict. That's not me. Oh, see. The enemy is trying to control. He's trying to discourage you. He's trying to control your thinking. You'll never make it. This will never work out. This is impossible. You can't face him. You know, that's what Saul was telling him. Dude, here, put on my armor. A lot of help that's going to do, King. See? And so they're not only daunting and taunting, they're flaunting. Can I think of another word that rhymes with that? See, you've tried to get past this thing earlier in your life and you couldn't do it. You've tried to deal with this before and it never worked out. Nothing's ever going to change. It was like this 10 years ago, it was like this last year, and it'll be like this from now on. And he just begins haunting you, see. It's a tool of the enemy. It reminds you of your past failures, your disappointments, and you think nothing will ever change. It's never going to be any different. This is the way it is, I guess. See? I don't know what your giant is, but let me tell you something. You have to face these things. And again, looking at the story, Saul, what were you thinking, dude? How many days did this go on? 40. After the first week, every morning, every night, the dude comes out, shoots off his mouth, and there's Saul in his tent. And his aides come in and say, Your Majesty, what are we going to do? I don't know. That was week 1. Week 2, now we're in 14 days. Week 3, now we're into 21 days. Week 4, we're into 28 days. Week 5, well, we're 35 days. Saul, this has gone on for 40 days, Jack. What's plan B? You see, to make no decision is to make a decision. What's going to change? Saul. I don't know. See, the issue, I think part of the issue of the story isn't just the battle between David and Goliath. The issue becomes, who is the best leader for Israel? And I think Samuel's making it clear. Saul, you don't know what you're in over your head, dude. You don't know what you're doing. Giants you're going to have to face this thing. You're going to have to deal with it. You can stick your head in the sand, you can sidestep it, you can avoid it, you can do nothing, and it will continue. And again, I ask the question, what is your giant? Patience that's hard to maintain, faith that's hard to sustain, godliness that's hard to attain, anger that's hard to restrain, or circumstances like we have in our lives. I don't know why our son's no longer walking with the Lord. I don't know. And how would you fill in the blank? See, you've got him. And so first of all, you're going to have to come to terms. I'm going to have to face it. I'm going to have to deal with this thing. See? Now, what lessons do we see in the text on how you deal with it? And there's a number, but I'd like to suggest one this morning. Here we go. You see, David never said, he's not that tall. David never said, he's not that strong. David never said, oh, all this armament, that's not that big a deal. Oh, no. David was realistic. David understood. David never minimized what the issue was. And I'm not going to do that with your issue either. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to you. The issue isn't that the situation that you're facing isn't a big deal. It is a big deal. The issue is which is bigger. Saul and his brothers and all the other people saying, dude, he's so big there's no way you can kill this guy. And David goes, he's so big there's no way I can miss. And so part of it is a perception issue. With whatever the issue is in your life, do you see God as bigger? That's a pretty good question. Because a lot of times I don't. A lot of times I think God's up in heaven going, whew, man, I think you're right, Joel. I've never seen anything like this before. Whew. This is a tough one. This is going to be hard. I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me? Jeremiah 32:27. I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me? You see, you've got to come to terms with which is bigger. Now, let me show you another secret and an insight that you've never considered before. When David shows up, he only speaks of Goliath 3 times. Verse 26, this uncircumcised Philistine. verse 30 or 26 and 36, he says the same thing, and then finally he never calls him by name. He does kind of a passing comment. This guy. He never says to Saul, by the way, how long's he been doing this? Oh, his whole life. And what's his win-loss record? Oh, he's undefeated. Just a second, sir. How big was that spearhead, did you tell me? It was, what, 35 shekels. And we don't have iron technology, do we? No. Isn't it interesting? David never asks those questions. Mentions Goliath as a passing comment 3 times. Watch. Isn't that interesting? What is David talking about? Everybody else is focusing on the weight of the spearhead. It was like a weaver's rod. They had bronze greaves. The guy had a helmet. Did you see how tall he was? Everybody else wants to talk about Goliath. Says nothing about the Lord. David shows up and talks about nothing but the Lord. You see, there's a subtle theme that becomes a subplot. God focus versus giant focus. Don't miss it. And the challenge I have for you this morning is that what are you focusing on more? The presenting problem in your life or in your family or with your daughter or with your son? Are you more absorbed and spend more time thinking about that and its details? Or are you spending more time focusing on the Lord? It's a pretty good question. Because let me tell you something. If you continue to spend your time focusing on the issue, that's a fool's errand. You have only got so much capacity in your emotional tank. You only have so much fuel in your spiritual tank. Now you can choose how you want to burn the fuel. You can burn down the fuel in your tank, worrying and sputtering and spitting and just focusing on the issue. And by the way, you're never going to figure it out. Because somewhere in a famous book I remember reading, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own what? Let me tell you something. If you bow at the altar of understanding, you're going to be one frustrated pup. Well, if I could only understand why she's shacking up with her boyfriend. I don't understand. You've said that. I don't understand. If I could just understand why he's treating us this way. You're not going to understand it. See, you're trying to unscrew the unscrewable. God does not call you to understand. And since when do you think you can understand it? What he calls you to do is to trust him on this thing. We had a family gathering yesterday, and I'm working on book number 4, and so I've been focusing on this, and concentrating the last few days on the feeding of the 5,000. And what's interesting is this, and I mentioned this yesterday to our family, the contrast between Philip's response and the little boy with the lunch's response to Jesus. Jesus asked Philip, how are we going to feed all these people? And what's he do? Whips out his calculator and goes, well, just a second. 5,000 men, women, half are married, let's see, with kids. Okay, we're at about 12 to 15,000 people. Just a second, hang on. Yeah. If you had 8 months' wages, everybody gets one bite. It's not going to happen. You see, if you try to look at the issue logically, it will be impossible. And what did this little boy do? He released the issue into the hands of Jesus, not knowing what Jesus was going to do. You got to let this thing go. You release it into Jesus' hands, not knowing what he's going to do. And you got to be okay with that. Now, here's my tendency. I'll say, okay, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to release it into your hands. Right? And so the word is, in the scriptures, I have to continue to release it and re-release it again and again and again. And that's what you need to do. And my focus needs to be on him, not him. I need to have a vertical perspective, not a horizontal perspective. Because if I maintain a horizontal perspective, I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to get myself in a ditch. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. It's a perspective issue. It is for you too. Let's pray. I'm going to try and kneel down here. Father, I love these folks, and I know that you love them too. You care about what we care about. Thank you for the hidden insights in this wonderful story. And forgive us, Lord, for being so absorbed by the dude's muscles and size and experience and weaponry. And Lord, that the enemy will use this to intimidate us. But may we be so caught up in you that our focus is upon you and not that thing. Forgive us, Lord, for burning down the fuel in our emotional tanks on things that we can't control anyway. And may each of us not just release it into your hands like that little boy, but to keep letting it go again and again and again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Another wonderful lesson.